Yo, what's going on guys? It is Foxy90 here. Welcome back to a brand new video. Today, we are covering the F1 2023 Australian Grand Prix. Of course, we've all seen the race now. It's been a couple of days, and I'm glad that I do these F1 debate videos a few days later, or even a week or so afterwards, because there's always a lot of drama that can sometimes happen, and even controversy that we'll be discussing in today's video. But nonetheless though, if you guys ended up enjoying the video, feel free to drop the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. And of course, the F1 debate is open for all interpretations and opinions, not just mine. Of course, mine is, well, a big, long video, however long this video tends to be. But obviously, the comments is available. Drop your comments in the comment section down below of what you thought of the Australian Grand Prix. Give yourselves an opportunity to give your opinion. But let's get straight into things then. Well, what did we know and what did we see and what did we witness? Well, we know that Red Bull is extremely fast and they dominated the Grand Prix once again with Max Verstappen winning the Grand Prix. They'll probably win 17, 18 races probably this year, I think. I think the latter stage of the season, they'll probably drop off a little bit. We saw them dominate. We saw a very interesting sort of chess match going on between Hamilton and Fernando Alonso for the battle for second place. Sainz and Gasly were sort of in there as well, although I'll get on to Gasly in a minute because I don't quite think it's as impressive as you probably think it is. We saw the McLarens having a decent race. We saw Perez fighting his way up the order. We saw crashes. We saw red flags. We saw safety car chaos. We saw penalties. We saw pretty much everything that could have possibly made it more, well, mental, really, in all of that. Oh, and engine failures and fires as well. We can't forget any of that. But what did I think of the Australian Grand Prix? Did I enjoy it? Did I hate it? Did I not? Overall, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good race. It was a very entertaining opening phase of the Grand Prix in which my heart was pumping at about 55 miles an hour because my two Mercedes boys were at the front of the field. But of course, you've got to be realistic. Verstappen was going to get past them anyway. The opening stint was quite interesting. I thought Verstappen, first of all, I thought Max is a little bit... I don't know. I don't understand Max. He's quite a weird driver. I'm just gonna put it out. He's just weird, right? So obviously, turn one, George Russell just got an equal. I'd say he probably got an equal start to Verstappen, maybe a little bit better, so that he was actually able to get a little bit on alongside. Broke into turn one, job done. Verstappen at that point, he's out of place. He's out of sequence, and with Hamilton so close behind and Alonso and Sainz, Verstappen decided to play it cautiously, and that's absolutely fair enough. But going into turn three, then. This is when Max started getting very whiny, should we say, at Lewis Hamilton about getting pushed off the track and how, because, you know, Hamilton was ahead at the apex, you know, he did, you know, X, Y, Z. And even after the race, when I think it was David Coulthard interviewed him, you know, Max again was saying, well, at least I know what the rules are now, you know, and stuff. And I'm just like, it was a very puzzling one because heading into that apex, Verstappen was actually ahead of Hamilton. And Hamilton didn't push Verstappen wide. They got close. And Max was on the curb and on the asphalt over there, but he was not on the grass at all. And Hamilton, you know, took the line and he took the position. And Max was a lot more cautious about it, should we say. But I just don't quite understand why he's complaining about it. And he even goes to the point of saying it after the Grand Prix. I mean, you flip that to 2019, for an example, when you've got Verstappen going up the inside of Charles Leclerc into the hairpin at Austria. Did it once down the inside, and they stayed side by side. It was fine. And the second time, just barges him off the circuit. No penalty awarded for that. So I guess fair game. And Charles Leclerc kind of remembered that. And then there was more of a chess match then the following round after that. And just every other time, you know, he's been either slightly ahead or not. I mean, if you remember Saudi Arabia 2021 when he dove, I think did he go the inside? No, he was on the outside, and at that point, the driver was ahead, e.g. Hamilton, and then he cuts the corner. He's just a weird driver. I just don't understand him. He's a great driver, but Christ, he's weird. So that happened, and of course, we had the first red flag. Did I think that Mercedes, from a Mercedes fan point of view, did I think that they would be able to put a challenge to Verstappen? Because it was turning into a bit of a three-horse race between those drivers. Honestly, no. I mean, the Red Bull was so much faster anyway, and you could see that all that was happening is that the Mercedes were being pushed to be that further ahead because Verstappen was pushing them. That's the whole point of it. I know they pitted under the safety car, and I think even if There was no red flag for the Albon incident. I can't see Mercedes even winning that race anyway. You saw how easy it was for Verstappen to pass Hamilton. In fact, he was, what, like 34 kilometers an hour faster in the straight at that point of passing Hamilton. There was just no real chance. Yes, Russell would have been on fresh hard tyres, but he would have obviously been in traffic. You know, tyre warm-up comes into play. The medium tyres would have stretched a bit longer. There's just too many elements in there that I felt like Russell, Mercedes probably wouldn't have won it. I mean, they at least... The thing with Mercedes, which is crucial for them at this stage of the season, obviously the DNF from Russell basically put everything that he was doing into the bin. As he was actually, in fairness, in front of Sainz, in front of Gasly, he was catching Alonso, so he was doing well. The thing with Mercedes is they've got two drivers that are always up there. And I say the same for Aston Martin as well. You know, they've got their drivers that they're up there. You know, Russell and Hamilton have been so close to each other in qualifying, with Russell pipping him 3 times. You know, in the race, Hamilton, you know, got the better of George in Bahrain, but George was, you know, behind Alonso, only 2 places back in Saudi Arabia. I think it was Russell that finished ahead of Hamilton. I'm sure he did. Yeah, he did. But they were literally, you know, tooth and nail. So Russell was 4th, Hamilton was 5th. And then here in Australia, now, of course, Russell was, at the time, was P4 and Hamilton was P2 until Russell's DNF. They're always really close together, and it's the same with Aston Martin. You know, Alonso and Stroll separated by 3 places in Bahrain. Obviously, nothing to separate them in Saudi Arabia because Stroll DNF. But again, then in this race in Australia, they were right next to each other. They were 3rd and 4th. The problem with Ferrari is that they don't seem to quite have that in Bahrain. Again, it's a hard comparison because Bahrain and Australia, Leclerc was out of the race. Sainz, obviously, in Jeddah was just in front of Leclerc. But I just feel like there's a better feel and a better partnership between Aston Martin and Mercedes than there is with Ferrari. I don't quite know why. It just feels a bit like that in some respects. But obviously, Red Bull out front. It was a great recovery drive from Checo Perez, though. You know, got to give him the shout out where it's due. It was a harder circuit to overtake on with the DRSs in full effect, and I'll put a segment of that in later on in this video. But it's a great recovery from him. Utilised the Red Bull straight line speed, even when other cars had DRS. He still just breezed past them, and that just shows the aerodynamic efficiency of the Red Bull and their drag reduction that they're able to get when having the DRS open is massive for them, and you know, credit to them for building such a car. Mercedes, I mean, like we've just sort of basically discussed a bit, they had a great weekend, but by far their best weekend of the season. Do I think it's an element of what's to come? No, I think the track suited them, the tyre temperature warm-up suited them, they got the car into the right window, which is apparently extremely hard for them to achieve. They literally had an absolutely faultless weekend. Obviously, the engine failure for Russell didn't really help with that, but they had the perfect weekend. There was nothing more I genuinely believe Mercedes could get out of that car. And same with Aston Martin. They literally maximised their performance. And again, the same with Ferrari. They maximised it. All 3 teams maximised it. And I think it was fair in terms of where they were, in terms of Mercedes, just tinily ahead of Aston Martin, just fractionally ahead then of Ferrari, who did actually drop off Sainz just before the red flag. The second one came out just before that. Ferrari and Sainz did drop off. They started to get like 3-4 seconds back, and you sort of just start to reminisce that Ferrari have got some problems that they really need to address. But the one person that gave a good standout was Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. He was absolutely flying in that race. He was keeping up with the Aston Martin, the Ferraris and the Mercedes drivers in that big train that was going on. But was it a little bit too good to be true? And this is where my DRS play comes into effect here. I felt like the DRS zones that they had were actually very effective. And it did give Australia some great racing. The biggest problem is it was literally impossible, unless you had a car that was over 1.5 seconds a lap faster, to get out of DRS of another driver. Like Nico Hülkenberg, for example, in the Haas, he got overtaken by Sergio Perez via DRS, which is fair enough. Hülkenberg was able to stick in Perez's DRS for a good 2 to 3 laps before Perez finally, you know, ebb and flowed his way out of that window. For me, I don't know what I think about the 4 DRS zones. I really don't. I think I think it works having 4 DRS zones for Melbourne. It's just one of those tracks which just doesn't really provide great entertainment. So I'm fine with them doing that, but I think they need to drastically reduce the DRS zones, especially the one going down towards turn 9. I felt like that one was just far too easy in my opinion. I think all 4 DRS zones needed to be shortened. If you're going to have a circuit which needs the extra aid of DRS, I'm absolutely all for it. You know, at the end of the day, we as fans want to be entertained when we're watching racing. But when we're seeing drivers just breezing past, now there's some that are a complete exception. My example, Hamilton v Verstappen. I mean, at that point, Verstappen's only like 3.5 tenths behind Hamilton when the DRS zone opens anyway, and the Red Bull was 34 kilometers an hour faster in a straight line. Of course it's going to breeze past. That's not a problem. And what I did like is that if the driver in front made an overtake in the one DRS zone, they'd get it for the next one as well, because they basically had 4 DRS zones but 2 detection points. That was actually very good from them to do that, because it allowed a lot less, I've got you, and now you know, and just a bit of, well, the quicker driver has actually made that overtake. So I think that was probably the right move. I just think they need to shorten the DRS zones for 2024. I think they were just a bit too powerful. And I feel like that's why Gasly, despite the fact he did a great job to stay in the DRS of Sainz, I just think that the only reason that Gasly was even in the mix, I mean, there was so many laps when it got to the DRS zone on the long straight heading towards turns 9 and 10, Gasly was a good 9.5 tenths back, just about in DRS, which is fine. But he was then closed all of that up, and it just shows that from the second DRS zone to turn 3, I think we're at now, turn 3, and the exit the second DRS straight, all the way up till turn 9, he's lost nearly a second, and that's a big chunk to lose. For really, turn 3, 4, 5, which are all twisty corners, 6 and 7, which is, you know, quite high speed anyway. So really, it just goes to show that Gasly did well to stay with them, but the DRS was just too powerful, and it just made drivers stick too close to each other when theoretically they shouldn't be. I think it's still alright because, you know, it meant that there was still an opportunity for a battle, but I don't know, it didn't quite, it gave me very mixed vibes, should we say, in all of that. Apart from that, though, there wasn't really a lot to talk about in the Australian Grand Prix in terms of that mid-phase of the race. Of course, we had a couple of drivers overtaking each other. We had, you know, the McLarens and the AlphaTauris, the Haas's battling each other. Shout out to Piastri for getting points, by the way, on his debut at his home Grand Prix. I'm really happy for him to get points, and for McLaren to get double points in all of that. But the big talking point, realistically, is to do with all the red flags, because we obviously had the start, the first 11, 12 laps, which were entertaining. Then it sort of dripped off a bit. Russell's DNF put a bit of a spike into it, made me upset. And then, obviously, it was just a massive chess match from then on in. But then it was the red flag situation that really just changed the Grand Prix massively. There's a lot of controversy with this red flag incident. Was it the right thing to do to get the red flag out? Should we have just finished under a safety car? You know, the sport needs to prioritise the safety and not endanger drivers, etc. And I'm going to go ahead and put my personal opinion out there. And guys, you can clip this, okay? Because you're going to witness something that I don't think I've ever done when talking in a Formula 1 video, whether that's the F1 debate or just in general. I defend the FIA for their actions during the Australian Grand Prix. And I have looked that directly into my camera, and it's going to be staring you in the eyes. I 100% defend the FIA for what they did during this event. So let's talk about it then. Well, of course, Magnussen caused some damage, and obviously the safety car came out. Did the red flag necessarily for that type of incident need to be warranted? I think so. I think, first of all, they've got to clear up all the debris through turn 2, and there's a lot of very sharp carbon fibre, even to the point, actually, I saw a clip of it, I saw an image, actually. There was a fan that some of the, wheel rim came flying through the fence. It actually slit his entire arm all the way down here. Obviously, I'm not going to show that on this video, because that's, you know, not doing that. But all the way down there, it was literally just a massive gash straight through there, and it was not nice to see at all. But not only did they have to recover, obviously, all the debris on that piece, there's obviously then also the car that stopped on track. Obviously, in the past, they've had safety cars come out for a Haas stop on track, exactly what Magnussen did, because it happened in 2018 when his wheels were not fitted properly. The problem is when you've got to get the car off the circuit from that section, you can have marshals over at this point, and then you've got to sweep up all the debris that's come across track, because remember, as he's hit the wall, he's actually then gone all the way over to the other side of the circuit, spraying all that carbon fibre. I think it was fair to do the red flag in that circumstance. I know a lot of drivers were really confused by it, but I just felt like it was probably more appropriate to do. If they were not going to do that, it definitely would have finished under the safety car. And now, were the FIA too scared to finish it under the safety car? The problem is the FIA are never going to win. Now, Abu Dhabi 2021 is basically where the FIA take this into a position. They obviously wanted to finish it in green flag conditions. That was the aim. They completely threw the rulebook out of the window, did it all wrong, and, you know, it left, you know, what has now been left in the past. Heading into Monza 2022, you know, there was a delay recovering Ricciardo's car. So initially, they pulled out the safety car in order to allow them to recover Ricciardo's car. And then, because they were basically anticipating, yeah, it's going to finish under green flags, we'll get Ricciardo's car recovered. But by the time they'd all realised that they had to wait before they could recover Ricciardo's car, they then didn't have enough laps really to do anything with it, so then finished it under the safety car. In that circumstance, the fans all complained, oh, boo, this is stupid, this is rubbish. Even the Tifosi were going ballistic. You know, you can tell why, because they obviously wanted to win and have a chance. You know, this is rubbish, don't like this at all. Should have red flagged the race and had a green flag sprint to the finish. We then come to this race and we had a green flag sprint to the finish, and it was a complete and utter chaotic mess. But it has worked. Let's go back to Baku in 2021. Remember that with the brake magic scenario with Lewis Hamilton? We did have literally like a 2-lap sprint to the finish, and it was absolutely fine. The biggest two problems was as follows. Here at Albert Park, it was harder to get the tyres up to temperature. That was the issue that they needed to come up with. The second thing was, and no one seems to be putting the blame towards anyone but the FIA, the people that you need to blame for the red flag chaos at the end of the Grand Prix are the drivers. At the end of the day, there's 2 laps to go in a Formula 1 Grand Prix. They've got the opportunity of a lifetime. It's a standing start. We've seen drivers make up 5-6 places off the line. This is the point where they're going to put as much risk as possible, go over the line to do it in order to gain as much as possible. Because at the end of the day, they've got unlimited boundaries on how much they can gain. Imagine if there was a big crash again at turn 1 and maybe it wasn't red flag worthy, but you know, there's a big crash at turn 1 and all of a sudden you've gained like 2 places from the 2 crashes, but then the drivers behind you, in front of you, have had to take a different line to avoid that. You've gone through those and you've got like 5 places. Well, you're going to go all in to make sure you gain those places. And at the end of the day, when you've got that burden on your head, the drivers aren't thinking about their tyres and if they're up to temperature and all this and whatever. They don't care about that. What they care about is nailing that start, sending it way beyond the limits of what their car is capable of doing at that specific point in order to gain as much as possible. And it ended up everyone losing as much as possible. What would I like to see in future? For me, I'd like to see red flags towards that latter stage of the race. I want to see a standing start. I want to see them going for it. I think the only thing that was a problem for me and what needs to be addressed is the whole safety car leading them around for like a good half of the lap. It doesn't allow them to do a proper formation lap. I know Lando Norris, for example, he slammed the FIA he slammed Pirelli for the awful tyres, which meant that the tyre temperature wasn't there for the cars. I think what they need to do in those circumstances is literally do a formation lap, but from the pit lane. So they're not going from their grid slots to do a full formation lap. They're just doing it from the pit lane. Leave the safety car at the front. The safety car at that point has done his piece. You know, the safety car has picked up the drivers. He's safely driven them around at a reasonable speed, got them back into the pit lane. Everything is safe. In terms of the whole safety aspect of this sport and doing this in being, you know, entertainment rather than safety, well, at the end of the day, the entire track is safe to drive on. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the drivers that are doing everything wrong. And it was probably because, again, they just couldn't get a full formation lap in. You know, the track temperature is coming down because the sun is setting, you know, everything's getting cooler. And when you're following a safety car for half a lap and then you've got to do a full standing start, it just gets too difficult. We know how difficult it is to warm up the tyres. Let the safety car peel off to the outside, let the drivers go through, burn out their tyres, allow them to do so, on the exit of the pit lane, get a full proper formation lap into play, and I don't think you'd see that situation again. You'd still see more crashes and people spinning each other out. It's just what happens. They've got to go for it. It's the point. And yeah, that's my version of the red flag incident, and I want to see more red flag restarts in the future, 100%. And that's pretty much where the race kind of lied, really. You know, we had 3 world champions on the podium for the first time since 2018, I think it was, in Hungary, I think, when it was Hamilton, Vettel and Raikkonen, so that was an interesting fact to note. But it was a good Grand Prix. I'd give it definitely like a 7 or an 8 out of 10, I think. Probably a 7. I think it's 8 out of 10 worthy. It was nice to see the chess match in there. And unfortunately, we've got a massive break now till Baku, which is a bit depressing. We've got like 3-week break now. So over the course of the 3 weeks, hopefully, it is busy in my life at the moment. I'll be able to release some F1 debate videos, not to do with, obviously, Grand Prix, to, you know, spice up the content. But yeah, I thought the overall weekend was great. However, I definitely want to see DRS zones reduced. Please, like, I really want you to. But we've obviously got Baku coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So what do I think is going to happen in Baku? Well, first things first, we're going to see a bunch of upgrades, I guarantee you. I know Aston Martin said they're definitely bringing some pieces to Baku. Ferrari, I think, are going to bring some. Red Bull will. Mercedes are not, because their concept is getting completely revamped at the moment, so they're not doing theirs till Imola. We've got a sprint race coming up by then, and also a lot of changes potentially to the weekend structure of that. And I'm going to give my thoughts on that in a separate F1 debate video. But in my early predictions of Baku, who I think is going to be strong as well, Red Bull will obviously be the favourites for the race. They're going to be absolutely rapid, especially on the long straight heading down towards the, you know, just the long straight at the end of the lap. Their straight line speed's a joke anyway. They'll be about at least 0.6 of a second per lap faster on that straight alone. I think Ferrari and Mercedes will struggle a lot in Baku. It's definitely more of a rear limited circuit, and that's the weakness of Mercedes and Ferrari. I think Ferrari will suffer a hell of a lot more than Mercedes, just in my opinion. Ferrari's got a lot of tyre wear problems that they're suffering with, and they suffered again in Australia. Not as badly, but they dropped off towards the last 10 laps when, you know, Aston's Alonso and Hamilton were pulling away. Sainz dropped back from that. So expect Ferrari to really struggle, in my opinion, at Baku. Mercedes, I think, will struggle anyway, because they still have some rear tyre problems anyway. But really watch out for Aston Martin. I genuinely think this is the first time that Aston Martin will really provide a challenge. As long as they can get their upgrades right heading into this race, I genuinely think they've got a great opportunity. Their car is extremely good in low-speed corners. It's the best car by far under braking. Their traction is immense as well. So in the first and the middle sector, that Aston Martin will probably be quicker than the Red Bull. This could be the first time that Red Bull are put under pressure heading into a race itself. And with the hands of Fernando Alonso, I really do think Aston Martin could do something great through there. But we'll just have to wait and see. But guys, that's pretty much the F1 debate for the Australian Grand Prix. That's my thoughts and all the main topics I wanted to cover. If you guys ended up enjoying the video, drop a like, subscribe if you're new around here as well. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. And as I said, any other topics I want to talk about whilst the F1 is on a little bit of a baby Easter break, then obviously I'll do so whenever I can have the time to facilitate doing so. But for now, guys, I'm out of here. Thank you for watching. Take care all. Peace.